Reading the Prince, Machiavelli's The Prince, written about 1510. So, the name of the work, The Prince, he talks about princes. I think, we think of a prince as being the son of the king, like Prince Charles in England or whatever. It is not what Machiavelli means by prince. Think about that word, think about etymologies. The prince, il principe, I guess in Italian, I don't read Italian, literally means the first. And if we go way back to beginnings of the Rome as an empire, Rome was a republic for hundreds of years, and then it ceased to be a republic and became, well, really a principality. The first emperor, Augustus, he was not called emperor at first, and I forget, I don't know. He was called the princeps. Really, what that meant was that he was number one. What the Greek historian Thucydides called the first man, the guy who's in charge. And so the prince is a ruler, and a ruler, as he says, not in the sense of a rule in a republic where there really is no personal ruler. There's an office, let's say, of prime minister or president that somebody fills for a certain amount of time. But a prince is somebody who has more or less seized, or not necessarily seized, who has power over the whole political community, over the whole community. Really, it's difficult to perhaps really differentiate between a prince and a tyrant, but I guess that's another discussion. But anyway, so a prince is not like the son of the king. The prince is the ruler, the first man, the first one, number one, the person who's in charge. And that is the person who is in that position is the one for whom Machiavelli is writing, supposedly. A very interesting dedication to Lorenzo de' Medici, I guess was the Prince of Florence at that time, in which Machiavelli is offering this work, The Prince, as a personal gift. Machiavelli is trying to get a job, trying to get out of. Machiavelli was a diplomat who worked for the Republic before it was dissolved or destroyed by the Medici. So interesting dedication. So this is really a different sort of work. In a way, putting it next to Aristotle's Politics and Dante's On World Government or De Monarchia, it's a little odd because, as you can see right away, it's not written in the same way. It's not written for the same purposes. I don't know how we would characterize what Aristotle and Dante were trying to do, but it's certainly different from what Machiavelli is trying to do. Machiavelli is giving advice to a ruler, whereas Dante and Aristotle were certainly not doing that so much as something else, some philosophical inquiry into politics and government. Whereas, I don't know, how would you characterize what Machiavelli is trying to do here? I've shortened this quite a bit. I've pared down the opening chapters quite a bit to what I consider to be their essentials, I think. I don't think they're this short in the original, but in any case, this is edited. We become pretty clearly, as we read along, we realize that he's giving advice about power and how to hold power. If you've seized control of a state, how do you hold it? If you've inherited a state from your family, it could be that your father was the original prince. How do you keep it? There are different types of communities that you might have acquired. Some of them different in customs and language. Some of them the same as your own. And how do you add them on successfully? Giving certain advice. I think that the real highlight and what the reason that I chose this reading was for what it leads up to, and that's his advice about what to do if you gain a new territory that is separate from your existing territories. How do you keep it? How do you subdue it? How do you absorb it in a durable way into your own possession? And he gives us a really striking piece of advice. I mean, very clear-eyed, very hard-headed. Always Machiavelli will remind us of the fickleness of human beings. They love you one minute and they hate you the next. And if you seize, with the help of some inhabitants, a new possession, those people will expect to be rewarded. And if they're not rewarded by you, they'll try to get rid of you. You can't rely on them for that. And what do you do if you have to absorb a new territory? He says the best thing you can do is to move there yourself, as you said, the Sultan of Turkey did. Going to actually conquering Greece, but then going to live there to sort things out for himself. That's the best way. But that could be impossible. Another thing you can do if you want to hold on to a new state or a new territory you've conquered is send your army there. But that'll bring on all sorts of problems. See how this is all practical advice? It's not about what's good, what's noble. There's an Aristotelian or Dante way of looking about it. It's about what's practical. And sending an army of occupation is just not practical. It's too expensive. It alienates the inhabitants. So what's the best way to handle it? Well, look what he says. He says it's actually send colonies. Like send your own people to live there. And of course, if you send colonists to a place, especially if it's a European place where there's no extra land, as if there's any extra land, you got to dispossess people. Well, people were dispossessed in America, of course. The Native Americans who were here when the Europeans arrived. The best way to assimilate, Dante says, to subdue the new territories is to send colonists. But the thing about that is you have to dispossess some people because you got to give land to your colonists. But as he says, don't worry about it. This is on page 5, second paragraph. He says, the other and better course, as opposed to sending an army, is to send colonies to one or two places, which may be as keys to that state. For it is necessary either to do this or to keep there a great number of cavalry and infantry. A prince does not spend much on colonies, for with little or no expense he can send them out and keep them there, and he offends a minority only of citizens, from whom he takes lands and houses, to give them to the new inhabitants. And those whom he offends, remaining poor and scattered, are never able to injure him, while the rest, being uninjured, are easily kept quiet, and at the same time are anxious not to err, for fear it should happen to them as it has to those who have been despoiled. In conclusion, I say that these colonies are not costly, they are more faithful, they injure less, and the injured, as has been said, being poor and scattered, cannot hurt. Upon this, one has to remark that men ought either to be well treated or crushed, because they can avenge themselves of lighter injuries. Of more serious ones, they cannot. Therefore, the injury that is to be done to a man ought to be of such a kind that one does not stand in fear of revenge. Well, very, very striking and so different. Machiavelli is not talking about whether it's right to dispossess people, scatter them, and make them poor. He's not talking about whether it's just or good, basically to wipe people out. He's saying that this is the most practical thing to do. He's not saying that it's good to hurt people, but he is saying at the end there that if you got to hurt somebody, hurt them bad enough that you don't have to fear them taking their revenge. You either treat them well or you crush them. If you treat them badly, but not badly enough that they are not crushed, they will get you. They'll come back. They'll come for you. So if you're going to do somebody a hurt them real bad. And if you can't hurt them, treat them well. Not because it's good to treat them well, it's a moral sense, but because it's wise, it's prudent. So this is just a taste of Machiavelli, what Machiavelli is doing here. And he's doing what he's doing. He's giving advice to a prince, which is not exactly, oh, let's make the best society, or what is society for? These philosophical questions, for instance, that Dante and Aristotle were asking. At least in this work, Machiavelli's not interested in that. He's interested, well, he's interested in what he would say are practical matters.